Welcome back to another episode of the Bad Influence Podcast. I'm Jordan Banderas, and before we begin, don't forget to hit that follow, subscribe button so you don't miss out on any of my episodes. So, I've been browsing social media and Reddit a lot lately since work is really slow right now, and I have noticed that people tend to lose it very bad during petty arguments more often than not. But it makes for a good reading, if you know what I mean. Sometimes the stories are kind of funny, sometimes are not, and I honestly think that it's also sad to see. But I used to be like that too, all aggressive and ready for a fight all the time. That's because I was on fight or flight mode all the time because of how I was raised and the environment that I grew up in. However, getting married made me realize that I needed to improve my communication skills, not just with my wife, but with everyone around me. My coworkers, my family, even though I cut them off, but I mean, my wife's family, like people that I always talk to, and even strangers. And something that I have learned is to distinguish between friendly disagreements and full-blown brawls. For instance, discussing your spending habits is a disagreement. So if you're like, oh, you spend too much money with your spouse or your partner or somebody's like, you spend too much money, you need to save money, this is why you're broke, that's a disagreement. But yelling about divorce while fighting over the TV remote is also a brawl. That's definitely I messed up. One, two, three. Welcome back to another episode of the Bad Influence Podcast. I'm Jordan Banderas, and before we begin, don't forget to hit that follow, subscribe button so you don't miss out on any of my episodes. So, I've been browsing social media and Reddit a lot lately because work is slow, especially because we were at the end of the year, and right now there's not a lot of things that we need to do. And I have noticed that people tend to lose it during petty arguments more often than not. But once you read the stories as to why that happens, it actually makes for a good reading, if you know what I mean. But it's also sad to see. Let's be honest. It's sad to see. And I can't really tell you that it's wrong or not if you do it, because I used to be like that too. All aggressive and ready for a fight all the time. And that's because of the environment that I grew up in and pretty much the people that raised me, my mom. However, getting married made me realize that I needed to improve my communication skills, not just with my wife, but with everyone around me. That meant coworkers, friends, strangers, just anybody that I had an interaction with. And something that I have learned is to distinguish between friendly disagreements and full-blown brawls. For instance, discussing your spending habits is a disagreement. If you and your partner or your spouse are like, you know what, you're spending too much money, you need to save money on this, or we need to save money for this reason, that's a disagreement. Especially because sometimes the other person is going to be all like, well, we do save money and I do need this, so that's a disagreement. But yelling about divorce while fighting over the TV remote, which is something that I have seen happen, is definitely a brawl. The same thing goes for work. Quitting your job mid-disagreement because you don't agree with something that is being said, that's a brawl too. You need to master the art of arguing instead of screaming your lungs out. Again, this is something that I used to do a lot, just get on petty arguments, petty fights, shit like that. And I didn't really like that, but I didn't have any other way of living, like I didn't know better. That's pretty much what I'm trying to say. But because of this, and because of today's episode, let me ask you something. Have you ever experienced irrational fears that make your brain go haywire? Imagine your boss saying, hey, come to my office at 2. Instant panic mode, right? I've been there. Every time my boss says, I need to talk to you, it reminds me of high school, because anytime I was told, hey, we need to talk to you, like my teacher or the principals, I was in trouble. So I always think that I get in trouble. And what happens is that it's your brain's scaredy cat mode, the amygdala kicking in. That's why it happens. But the good news is that you can learn how to flip that switch while it's still standing your ground, which is extremely important. This is something that I learned because during an argument, your brain goes on autopilot and you just react. Have you noticed that? But once the dust settles, your rational side kicks in because now you're calm. And suddenly, you're the king and queen of comebacks. Like, has that ever happened to you where you get on an argument or a fight, and then an hour later, whenever you calm down, you're like, shit, I should have said this and that person won't have a comeback. Like, I should have done this, whatever, after the fact. That's because of you calming down and your amygdala literally saying like, okay, I'm safe, whatever, like I don't need to overreact. And the key is to turn off autopilot and focus on the issue, not the actual person, not diagnosing them, because that's one thing that we like to do as people. We like to tell others what they have, like their problem is like, oh, you're just too emotional, you're angry because of this, you're this, that. You like to diagnose them. I used to do that a lot. I have done that with my wife. So to avoid that, you need to stay in the moment. Don't think about what you have to say. Analyze what the other person is saying so you can actually diffuse the situation. This has actually saved me from getting on petty arguments. Just like listen to the person, analyze what they're saying, ask them a question that will make them think logically, and they get off of that emotional state, because you cannot be in an emotional state when you have to use logic. The logic side of your brain will take over. And another thing is that I know, this is a fact. There's no statistics about that, but this is a fact. People can be a pain in the ass, especially right now, right? Always asking or doing something when you're about to relax. And when they're doing something, it's literally pissing you off, right? Or when they're asking you to do something for them, it also pisses you off. But you need to set boundaries. This is something that we have talked about a lot throughout the podcast episodes. Boundaries are important. So instead of saying, oh, they always do this, talk about what's happening right there and then. Keep it real and specific. Don't beat around the bush. Just be like, hey, you're doing this, right? This is what's happening. Don't turn a dirty floor into a whole disaster, because based on what I see online, people tend to blow things out of proportion. And I used to do that a lot again. So focus on the issue, not the fucking imaginary apocalypse that you're already building or creating in your mind, right? Like, oh my gosh, he's gonna fight. He's gonna leave me. She's gonna leave me because we're fighting. Like you're already like thinking like months ahead, years ahead. You're gonna be like you. So I've seen people, and I heard people say this. Like, oh, you're gonna leave me, and I'm gonna be homeless. Just because they're getting on a petty argument. And that's not good. And I know this is hard. This is hard, doing all of this that I'm talking about. But here's my secret to doing this. First, focus on your feelings, your anger, your frustration, your resentment. The reason why you need to do that is because they usually hide something deeper. So ask yourself, what else am I feeling? Because underneath, there's always a fear. It could be losing someone or fearing criticism or looking stupid, but there's always a fear. And until you figure it out, you're just reacting, not acting accordingly based on whatever's happening around you. Now, when arguing, people tend to throw around always or never because it reminds them of past grudges. Probably you have done that. Again, I have done it. That's why I'm talking about it. It's like when we get on arguments, let's say with my wife, this has happened before, she will always say, you never clean the dishes. You always leave them in the sink dirty and I have to finish your job. Right? But one of the things that we learn on couples counseling is that emotions connect us. So saying something like, I'm hurt, bridges the gap better between facts and reality, right? It's actually better to say I'm hurt because it bridges that particular gap better than throwing facts. You get where I'm going? It's like, in this case, like with my wife, when she said that about the dishes. At first, it will piss me off. I will be like, you're always blaming me. You always saying that I don't do anything. That's what I was thinking. But then she said, like, you know what? Your attitude towards the dishes is hurting me. Because you start something, you don't finish it, and then I have to finish it for you. And you also have to understand that I'm in pain. And that's when it hit me. I was like, holy shit, she is right. Like, I'm doing this for her. And I mean, I'm doing this to her. And it's not going to help her because she's in pain. I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do. I mean, just putting the dishes, cleaning the dishes, or washing them by hand, or just rinsing them out and putting them in the actual dishwasher is not that hard. That's pretty much what was happening in my situation. So I had to change, and especially after she said that she was getting hurt physically and emotionally because I wasn't pulling my weight. Also, don't be the constant angry person. It's not a good look. And instead of being the angry person, understand your fears and communicate. You need to connect to correct. That's very important. You gotta be curious, ask questions, and be solution focused. And arguments are not a straight line. Think of them as a triangle. You gotta find the middle ground. You gotta see what works for both of you. And in order for you to be able to achieve that, you guys have to be curious, or in this case, you have to be curious. You have to brainstorm and explore new possibilities that is gonna give you a solution that will work for the two of you. And this is actually the most important thing that I'm gonna tell you in today's episode. For fuck's sake, no fighting in public. Just keep it fucking private. I don't know why people like to fight in public for petty shit. Like they're going to win a fucking award. I don't know if this is because of social media or just, I don't know, reality TV, because I see that a lot on reality TV shows like the Real Housewives of whatever city they're on now. The Vanderpump Rules. Everybody fights in public. And then people like you and me go out in public and we feel like we can actually fight in public so everybody can see that we're the victims. That's pretty much what it is. When you fight in public, you're trying to look like the victim. You're trying to make the other person look bad. So don't involve the whole fucking town in your arguments. Choose two trusted people and talk to them. It actually works better that way. And you can also talk to a therapist or a coach, just like my wife and I did. They're trying to help you see things from a different angle. They're not going to fix your problems. They're just going to tell you, okay, this is how I see it. And then it's up to you to understand if they're right or not. And that one friend who calls you out on your bullshit, that's priceless. If you have a friend like that, don't let them go. Talk to them. Just be like, hey, call me out. I think I'm doing something wrong, and they will do it. And lastly, don't trash talk your partner or your boss to the world, because you might patch things up, but others won't forget. So keep your options open and think before you bend. I've seen that so many times where people trash talk their spouse or their boss or their friend, and then they work things out. The other person sees what the other person actually posted online, and then it creates a bigger problem. Trust me, when I learned all of these, my arguments got way more civilized with my wife, with my coworkers, with my bosses, with everyone. And it actually makes your life easier because you can show that you can step up and become a leader, because a leader is going to have to diffuse arguments just like that. And you need a lot of tools to be able to achieve that. What I'm giving you today is one of those tools. Learning how to literally diffuse those arguments so you can be like, you know what? I'm the grown up in this situation. You don't have to say it like that, but you're going to feel like that. So that's it for today. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more inspiring content. Remember to keep an open mind and engage in respectful discussions in the comments below. Remember to share, like, and subscribe, and hit that notification button so you don't miss out any important content or any new episodes. And here are my final thoughts. Learn how to deal with arguments, because if you want to become a leader, you are going to face them head on. And have a great day.